All right. So when in doubt, start from the beginning. What is design thinking? Uh, and maybe one way to analyze this is let's go through the word. Uh, Thinking is too big of a topic for this session. So we will mainly focus on the idea of design. What is design? And the way we would think about it is by trying to contrast the role of a designer versus an artist. I would like you to think, what is it that makes a designer different than an artist? Maybe I'll take a minute or so to think about it for a bit. Now, one key thing that usually pops up is solving problems. And we think of a designer as somebody who can solve problems, but the argument then becomes, do the artists solve problems too? And I think if we are to say that artists can be useful, we have to also admit that an artist can solve problems. Even a painting can solve a problem about somebody being maybe a little bit depressed or not feeling so well. So music can uplift you. So it is solving a problem for you. So then, okay, if both of them solve problems, then maybe it is something about the nature of the problem. Now, it could be a functional problem. It could be an emotional problem. It could be a societal problem. And let's try to go through them one by one. Now, what is a societal problem? Uh, are we getting along fine? Now, is there something that a designer can do in order to help us get along better? And I think the answer is obviously yes. Designers can create spaces for us to interact. They can also design tools that are going to help us communicate and help solve societal problems for us. Now, then the question is, can an artist solve a societal problem? And I think we'll have to concede that the answer is yes. And the reason for that is, well, sometimes some certain songs bring us together, certain stories bring us together. So even in the purest forms of art that we can think of, artists and designers can solve societal problem. Therefore, the difference between a designer and an artist cannot be whether or not they solve a societal problem. Now, how about an emotional problem? Can an artist solve an emotional problem? This is a part where we would say, yes, mostly that is their focus. If we mainly think of artists as musicians, painters, people who talk to our emotions, then we have to concede that they potentially solve emotional problems. Now, the question is, can a designer solve an emotional problem? And I think the answer will have to also be yes. I mean, if you hear of user journeys, for example, it's basically an attempt of product managers and UX designers to track the emotion of people throughout the process of buying from your company or your product. And you track, one of the things you track is you track the emotions. And when you design solutions or develop solutions, one of the things you're trying to solve for is the emotional problem. Because sometimes it's not about giving me something that is of better quality, it is about giving me something that I prefer. So I think we can also agree that both designers and artists can solve emotional problems. Now comes the last one, functional problems. And this is the part where we think that the designer, their main job is to solve functional problems. So we can agree that a designer can solve a functional problem. Now let's look at it from the artist perspective. Can an artist solve a functional problem? And I'll just take an extreme case. Suppose an artist were to create a statue, and people figured out that they can use the statue in order to sit on it. So maybe that wasn't necessarily intentional, but a work of art can solve a functional problem. Now, it can be intentional maybe sometimes, it can be unintentional, but that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for the difference between a designer and an artist based on the type of problem that they solve. And for now, whether it is functional, societal, or emotional, it looks like both designers and artists can solve these type of problems. Now, how about if we, instead of looking at the type of problem, let's look at the source of the problem. Is it an inner problem or outer problem? Now, to basically clarify the definition a little bit, an inner problem is something that I care about myself. An outer problem is something that other people care about. Now, as a designer, I'm definitely solving outer problems. That's the job. And as an artist, I'm also definitely solving inner problems because I guess that's the objective of the expression. But if we were to flip it, does an artist solve an outer problem? And I think here again, if we have to concede that artists can be useful, which obviously they are, then they must be solving problems for others too. That means when a piece of art makes you feel better or makes you feel a certain way, that is a problem that you had that is being solved through the work of art. Now, would a designer solve an inner problem? And I guess that's also a little bit self-evident because, well, I'm a designer. I'm having trouble with my chair, so I can design a better chair. I'm a designer. I have a problem with a specific app or a specific feature, so I can fix my own problem in a sense. So whether it is an inner problem or an outer problem doesn't seem to be the difference. Now, if it's not the type of problem, it's not the source of the problem, what is left? Maybe it is the intention. As a designer, you intend to solve a problem, but as an artist, maybe it just so happens that you solve the problem. Uh, but even this does not necessarily, it doesn't necessarily stand. Because as an artist, if you're making a piece of art that is going to make people feel a certain way, we can't deny that it's art if you're aware that it might solve a problem. So if you're aware that your piece of music is going to make people feel better, are you no longer an artist because now it's in your intention? You know that I'm creating this art and it's going to make people feel a certain way. That that doesn't seem to make sense a lot. And the same way as a designer, if you are if you're not intending to solve a problem, but you happen to basically create a solution for a problem, like imagine basically you are what's it called, developing uh, some type of adhesion, for example, in order to be used for painting or for what's it called, sticking pieces of art or something like that. And then you realize that, oh, whatever it is that I created can also be used in manufacturing in order to basically uh, fix certain types of metals together. There are a lot of cases where people went in to solve a certain problem and they ended up solving another problem. So, in a sense, the intention to solve a problem is not necessarily where the difference lies. So, if it is not intention and it is not the nature of the problem, and it's also not the source of the problem, then what is the difference between a designer and an artist? And here, my contention is that the difference is in the methodology used. And what do I mean by that? When a designer sets out to solve a problem, what they do is they start from the problem itself. And they spend time in order to understand the problem really well. And there is a belief within a designer that a good understanding of a problem will help create a good solution. So the solution is an afterthought to understanding the problem properly. Whereas the artist, on the other hand, will focus on the solution first, because that is the expression of their artistic aesthetics. So what they focus on is the product that they are producing, which is the work of art. That's there. And it is also, again, their belief that if the work of art is good enough, if it sticks to whatever aesthetic principles they have, it will end up solving a problem that is worth solving. So, in a sense, both a designer and an artist have to make a leap of faith, in a sense, in order to make sure, because we both need a problem and a solution to be effective. The difference between an artist and a designer is that the artist starts from the solution as an expression of their artistic, uh, what's it called, taste. And then they believe that if they have a good expression of their artistic taste, it's going to be a good solution for certain people. Whereas the designer will start from figuring out what the problem is specifically, and then they have the belief that if they understand the problem really well, they can come up with a good solution. Now, the question becomes, I am hoping some of you are asking this question, why do we even care? Like, okay, designer, artist, what does it matter? And what's so useful about this definition? And the thing is, if we use this definition in order to differentiate between designers and artists, we start seeing them everywhere. And what that means is, imagine you are a developer. Now, as a developer, you believe in your craft. You believe in certain, for example, solid principles. You believe in what is it? DUI. You believe in certain principles that are related to what's a good quality code. Now, you believe that if you do create something that adheres to this principle, it's going to end up becoming a good solution. So, as a developer, you could potentially start from a solution. And what you care about is the quality of your code, it's the quality of your process. Maybe you care about TDD, BDD. Uh, you have certain concept of what does it mean to create a good solution. And you have a belief that if the solution is really good, if I create really good quality code, then this really good quality code is going to end up becoming a really good product that people will use and people will like. So as a developer, I could start from the solution and then go to the problem, but then you're not being a designer. You are behaving as an artist. And I think a more common word that's being used is engineer versus craftsman. Because the other way, an engineer would start by understanding the problem really well, developing a scientific approach for basically ensuring that whatever it is that you are developing is going to solve your problem. So you start with understanding the problem really well, and you basically believe that your skills are going to help you create a solution later on. Now, the same can go to basically startup founders. Some startups are, I mean, that is the advice you get for most startup is that pick a problem first that you know really well. And if you find a solution for it, then that's going to be a successful company. Now, that is a better way to basically start uh, or found a startup. However, that's not necessarily the most common way. A lot of startup founders are starting from a solution first, as in they have this idea of an Airbnb for cars, Tinder for cats and dogs. They start with a solution, a blockchain solution for what's it called, food traceability. They start from a solution first, and they believe that if they create a really good solution, then it's going to solve a problem for others. So as a startup founder, you could also start from the solution and then go to the problem, or you could start from the problem and then go to the solution. Now, I can't guarantee as to which one of those is going to succeed, because a lot of success is a little bit relies in a bit of chance too. So nobody can give you a guarantee which approach works. There is value in both approaches, go in solution then problem and problem then solution, because if you care about the solution a lot, then you're more likely to develop certain standards that are abstract enough that they can be used by others. Whereas if you understand the problem, then you're more likely to make trade-offs. So there is value in both of these approaches. I would only argue that starting from a solution first and then hoping that it fixes the problem is a much bigger risk in terms of startup founder, for example. Because imagine you create a solution first, and let's concede that yes, probably any good solution is going to solve a certain type of problem. Now, the problem is it is solving a problem, not the problem that you care about, not the problem that you can monetize, not the problem that you have access to, which means even if this ends up being true, as in once you created the solution, it did solve a certain problem, there is no guarantee that it is solving the problem that is going to make you profitable. Whereas if you start from the problem first and you have a good understanding of the problem, you have a good validation that this problem is worth solving, that once solved you could potentially monetize it or basically reach your objective through solving it, then even a bad solution is going to get you a little bit closer to what you really need. So this is a useful basically a thought model in order to basically, once you look at discussions happening within your team, or once you start to basically start a new project, whether it is you yourself, you could find yourself erring in one side or the other, it's good to take a step back and understand how to establish that balance. Am I being more of an artist or am I being more of a designer? If you have a team that is arguing, you will find a lot of people that are arguing in this space, the problem space, and a lot of people that are arguing in the solution space. And a lot of time they will be talking at each other and they're not in sync. So one way is to handle this is potentially to try to get everybody to step back and appreciate that there is value in starting problem solution, and then there is a value in starting from solution problem, and find way for all of them to kind of work together. Over the next sessions, we are going to go in a little bit more details about how can this be done. And then after that, we'll also try to give some use cases that are a little bit practical that you can try using and see how that works out for you. Thank you for listening.